Good day, everybody. This is Marcel Portune, and welcome to another edition of the Sports Inquirer Show. We are broadcasting on July 10th, 2020. Hope all of you are well and safe out there wherever you're listening to our show. As always, if you want to follow everything that we're doing, head to the mothership, thesportsinquirer.net. Premier site for news and notes in the world of sports. You can also go to our Twitter and Instagram pages, and those are listed under the word Sports Inquirer, all one word. Make sure you do a search there. Check out everything that we're doing. You can also go to our Facebook pages. The first one is The Sports Inquirer, those separate words. And the second one is Sports Inquirer, that's all one word. And finally, subscribe to us on YouTube and SoundCloud under The Sports Inquirer, those are separate words. When you access those sites, you can see our archived shows, including the Sports Inquirer Show, like you're listening to now, the Verbal Submission, our mixed martial arts / professional wrestling podcast focused on combat sports, and other news and notes around the world that we are doing. On today's broadcast, we're going to discuss the MLS is Back tournament and the first few matches, and preview Atlanta United's contest against New York Red Bulls on July 11th, excuse me. So we'll talk about that contest with audio from manager Frank de Boer and defender Miles Robinson. We're going to go into the Gridiron Blitz and discuss the NFL. We'll delve a little bit more into Desean Jackson, a little bit of reaction since our last show. Also, the Washington franchise looking to change its name from the Redskins. I have some thoughts on that. And the coronavirus precautions that the league is trying to do. We'll delve into college athletics and the technical state of Georgia athletics. Some news from the Ivy League and the Big Ten. How does that impact not only those conferences, but the teams locally here in the state of Georgia and beyond? In miscellaneous notes, we'll discuss the NBA, their plans of trying to get back onto the court and things like that. But everything is good here for us. As always, we are still relatively quarantined here in Atlanta, Georgia. Or it's a self-quarantine. You can do whatever you want. But outside of heading to the store, doing some walks in the park, getting some workouts in, pretty much staying at home the whole time. And I've been to the store. I've actually gotten some things like Chinese food and gotten there, and I'm healthy. So my places are pretty good in that regard. But things are relatively normal here. The big thing for us now, and it does tie into sports in several ways. Well, two big things. One is, at least the way things seem to work, is that Atlanta tends to dictate what happens throughout the rest of the state in economics and just other things like that. I'm pretty sure, it's pretty sure it's confirmed, it's a mandatory mask wearing in Atlanta. So I think with that ties into our professional teams, at least here in the state, because that's where the Falcons and the Atlanta United play, and the Hawks and the Atlanta Dream, things like that. Now, those teams aren't playing in Atlanta at the time being, but it's something to think about over the next month or two, especially when the MLS is Back tournament is over for Major League Soccer, and United is back. And with the Falcons, when they get back to playing, are we going to see fans in masks, or will be fans at all in the arenas and stadiums? So that's something to keep an eye on. And the second thing, and it does tie into the college athletics, and we'll delve deeper into that as well later on in the show. But we're seeing a lot of the schools and plans of trying to reopen, because at least here in the state of Georgia, the first week of August is a very big time for schools to open by county, and also at the collegiate level. So as far as the counties go, if you look at pre-K, kindergarten, elementary school, middle school, and the high schools, all of those start off really the first week of August. So now we're starting to see plans to have family members that are in the school system as far as working. So you're starting to see a lot of things, and I have friends and family who have children that are of that age, high school and below, having to make preparations for them to get back to classes and everything like that. That affects high school sports in a big way, of course, because if the kids aren't going to school, there are going to be no games. That affects me personally, because that's a big part of my job. But and we're trying to figure out some things in that regard. I'm sure wherever you're listening to us, it's the same scenario, at least in the United States, as far as those things are going on. So the masks have become a bigger presence in our everyday lives. How does that affect the spectators as far as going to events or media? For myself, media coverage, I don't cover the Atlanta Braves personally, but I do have some colleagues that do cover the Braves, and they've been heading down to the Truist Field. I keep wanting to say, I was about to say Turner Field. That's names ago. But Truist Field, which is in Marietta, which is in Cobb County, which is not Atlanta technically, even though the Braves are the Atlanta Braves. It's in a different county, different city. But they've been going to cover the game, to cover the practices as the Major League Baseball is going back into play, and they're in the stands. They're in the press box area. They're not allowed to go down to talk to the players and coaches who are in their locker rooms and obviously practicing on the field. They have to do a lot of, and I've been doing this a lot with Atlanta United, a lot of the Zoom calls or Skype calls, whatever you want to say, or Microsoft Teams. So it's virtual or video chat conversations as far as the interviews go. So that's been the way the teams have been trying to have media coverage and things like that. And I know when they go to the stadium, they're temperature tested. I don't know if they get tested for the coronavirus itself, but I know they're temperature tested. I do know that much. But I said I have not been down there. We don't cover the Braves in that regard. We talk about the Braves, of course, when the season's going on. As far as going to the actual stadium and doing coverage, we don't do that per se, so I can't say how that's going to be. And I do a lot of coverage of the college athletics, particularly at Georgia Tech in Georgia. And as I'll save my notes there as far as the technical state of Georgia athletics later on in the show. But my stuff doesn't ramp up with them until August as well. So right now I've been able to pretty much stand pat and be home and continue to get audio and other information for my shows and things like that. But the real world is crossing over into it. A league that has started back up and playing is Major League Soccer with the MLS's back tournament, which began earlier this week. But even before the tournament started, we had FC Dallas. They have they were withdrawn from the tournament, excuse me, because they had a large amount of players test positive for the coronavirus. And Nashville SC also had to withdraw from the tournament. Now, technically, the Orlando City Inter Miami match took place before Nashville had to withdraw from the tournament, but their match was supposed to be the same night against Chicago. And so they had to withdraw because of a lot of positive tests as well. So that's where, even before the tournament started, teams were essentially eliminated from the competition. I don't have any word of how that's going to affect them because these matches are supposed to count towards regular season standings, and those teams cannot participate. So I have not gotten word of what's going to happen with their point situation. But we've seen 3 matches so far as of this recording. As we saw Miami and Orlando play, and the whole social reform or movement, particularly Black Lives Matter. I don't delve deep into that on this show because I try to avoid the politics, and it is politics. I will say that people are saying that it's not politics, it's social reform, it is political, just the way it is. But I thought it was a very moving and well done or executed statement by the black players of Major League Soccer, and they expressed their Black Lives Matter movement and had the moment of silence for George Floyd. When we've seen this in other leagues, people silence for more than 8 minutes. That because that was the amount of time that George Floyd was. I want to use more words carefully. He was subdued or was in control by the cops, and ultimately led to his passing, his death. So that had all the players on the field and with the T-shirts and things like that. I thought that was well done. I think if you are coming back from a few months long layoff, and this was the first game or first match, I think that was good for it to take place then. A lot of people were watching. A lot of non-soccer fans were watching. I saw the messages and everything. Like people that I didn't even know followed soccer were commenting on it and showing the respect of it and everything like that. I thought it was good that they did it then, which is fine. But now I think it's time to get back to more of the actual games and getting back to being on the pitch. And since then, we've seen that happen. There wasn't that as big a display in that regard. And I think the other leagues have to be careful with that. We'll get to NBA and NFL, but I think them trying to incorporate the Black Lives Matter movement and putting that on such a grand stage is something that they have to be careful of, as far as alienating people and things like that. But I thought it was well done. I had to comment on it because it was national news, the ceremony before the match played. As far as the matches themselves, I thought that for Miami and Orlando, sloppy, which was expected. You had a very scary injury to the defender. He had difficulty breathing, and that stopped the game for quite a bit. I think he's healthy now. Now he had to go to the hospital, so he's not going to be able to go back into the bubble of Orlando and participate in the rest of the tournament. But I thought the match was well done. Nani had a late goal at the end to get the win for Orlando City. I thought the New York, NYCFC, and Philadelphia match, that wasn't bad either. That took place yesterday on July 9th for an 8 o'clock start, which I don't think is the biggest issue in the world. I've talked to coaches in the past, and as long as you have a heads up and know ahead of time what your start is, it's okay. It's when you're in a tournament or things like if you're expected to play at 6 o'clock at night and then the night before, day before, you're told you're going to play at 9 a.m., that's where the problems arise. But these guys are used to playing in tournaments. I know someone said they haven't played it as early as 9 a.m. before. I don't know about that. Even when it was my age, I had to play some games that early, just whether it's AAU or club level sports. So I think that part is okay. I remember Nick Saban saying one time that if he wants to kick off Tuesday morning at 10 a.m., was head coach of Alabama football, he said if we want to kick off at like Tuesday at 10 a.m., we can do it. Just as long as you know that you have some time to prepare for it in advance. And these coaches have had time. They've had the schedules released, so they're used to playing, or they're going to know they're going to play at 10:30 p.m. or 9 a.m. and things like that. I think the quality of play, it will improve. The first match for every team is going to be tough just because the guys are not in shape. And I think what's not talked about enough as well is the timing. You saw several hard tackles from players that led to some cards and some tension. I don't think that was intentional. I think those guys just their timing isn't right when it comes to tackling and defending and things along those lines. It's similar to football, American football, where the first few weeks of the regular season or even the preseason, tackling is hard because when you're competing against each other, as far as your team goes, you're not going 100% out to take out your teammate. I mean, you're being aggressive and you're trying to be physical, but you're not going all out. And that's a similar deal with the soccer players, especially the defenders trying to defend against the midfielders. You're not going to see, as far as Atlanta United, you're not going to see guys try to take out Pity Martinez or Ezekiel Barco or Joseph Martinez when he's on the field, going with that hard but hard, tough tackle in practice because you need them for the regular season. Or you're not going to go crashing into Brad Guzan during practice as far as going for a header, the goalkeeper, because you want him to be healthy and available to play for your squad. So that's where you're going to see some toughness or some injury. And that's where injuries, I think, get led to as well. And you're going to see some soft tissue injuries. And Frank de Boer, he discussed that. We'll get to some audio from him. But he's discussed that as well. Dealing with the heat, dealing with stamina. You have the 5 subs. That helps as far as getting the guys as far as health goes. But then also, I don't know if it was Taylor Twellman or Kyle Martino one of the soccer analysts. I wish I remember which one, but he brought up a good point. When you have 5 subs, especially if you don't use one in the first half, which a lot of these guys try not to, and because especially when you have the water breaks midway through the first half, you can have a completely different lineup out there for the second half, and that affects tactics in a major way. If you only have 3 subs and you still try to reserve one for the goalkeeper for the majority of the time, because if your goalkeeper goes down, which happens, you want to have at least one sub to replace them with the backup goalkeeper. So you're really only playing with 2 subs per match under normal circumstances for the most part. If you have 5 subs, you can change your alignment in a major way. You can bring in extra defenders, midfielders. You can change go to your back 4, back 3, 5 midfielders, 1 striker, have an additional striker. You can change your lineup on the fly in the middle of a match at any time. So I think that affects the tactics in a big way, and that's something to look at as well. But Atlanta, they start their first. They have the first match July 11th against the Red Bulls, and we were able to speak with Frank de Boer, the manager of Atlanta, about the struggles or the challenges, I should say, of preparing for the tournament. So here's manager Frank de Boer discussing the challenges.
We know what we want tactically, but especially physically, can they do it 90 minutes long? And that's going to be a really challenging thing, I think, during this whole tournament, especially the first 3 games, I think. So also, adapt to the circumstances, the weather, the humidity and everything. So the heat and everything. So yeah, we have to see how it goes, but yeah, hopefully, we come out well and also with good results, of course. The second positive, he is already in here and he already trained a couple of days now with us. So we are on full strength right now and we have no injuries. Touch wood. No, so yeah, it looks really well, and he's also capable to start. So sure, not 90 minutes, that's for sure, but everybody's available for Saturday.
And that was Frank de Boer discussing the challenges of preparing for the tournament and the importance of getting off to a fast start. Atlanta is 2-0 on the season. They were able to defeat Nashville and Cincinnati before the stop of the regular season. But he discussed how important it is to get off to keep the fast start going and being down in Orlando and doing that.
A lot of confidence for the 2 other matches, and also yeah, put off a little bit the pressure, of course. When you have 3 points, you can lose a game, and then the next game you can, with 3 points, normally you go through to the next round. So it's always very nice to start well. But that said, the Dutch team won only 1 title, and it was in '88, the European Cup, and they lost the first game 1-0. So it's not always like that. But well, for me and myself, that a good start will help you, in that. The second question.
And that was manager Frank de Boer discussing the importance of the fast start. Now, facing the Red Bulls, this is a team that has been that Atlanta's faced them in the postseason before. They've competed for the Supporters Shield and for the top of the Eastern Conference standings. Here are Frank's thoughts on facing the Red Bulls in the first match of their MLS's back tournament.
About the first question, I think Red Bull normally is always the same. They are very direct, want to play very fast forward to the strikers, and then the 2 wingers, false number 10s come inside, and yeah, with quality, and they want to make the play at that moment, and like Kaka, who is a very important player, of course, for them. And yeah, so it's always an intense game. They don't give you any time normally when you have the ball. You always have to understand you're always getting into a challenge, so we have to be prepared for that. If we start sloppy, you will punished against this kind of teams, and that's Red Bull, typical Red Bull. And we have to be aware of that. That a lot of balls behind our last line, and if we head it away, they are really eager to get that second ball. And if we win it, then we have a lot of possibilities to really punish them. I remember the away game that, of course, I think they received a red card, of course, when they tackled Joseph. We had a lot of opportunities, especially in transition, and I think we gonna have the same kind of approach also against them this time, because they always play the same. So it's a very good strength of him for them, and we want to play football on the ground, but we have to understand, when we can come out of that pressure, then directly it's 1-against-1. So it's going to be an interesting game, that's for sure.
And now it's Frank de Boer discussing the Red Bulls and facing them. And we also were able to speak with Miles Robinson. He has not played in the regular season, sustained an injury during the offseason or during training. So he has not been on the field since, I think, September, October of 2019. So he was able to spoke with the team, or spoke with the media about coming back to playing and what he's looking forward to.
Feeling definitely very healthy. I'm feeling pretty fit, and I'm definitely ready to get out there and play again. It's been a while for sure. When you think about it, it's been a long, long time since I played my last 90 minutes, but definitely a little antsy to get back out there and just compete. It kind of stinks there's going to be no fans in the crowd, but I think everyone's antsy on the whole team, even with this whole, COVID-19. But I think we're all ready, and we're all definitely excited to get out there.
And that was Miles Robinson, the American defender, discussing his return back onto the pitch. So that's what's going on with the MLS is Back tournament. And when we do our next show, we'll have a recap of Atlanta's contest, and there'll be some more matches that we will see in the tournament. Moving on to the NFL and the Gridiron Blitz. Thing about Desean Jackson, we talked about it on our last show, his anti-Semitic statements on social media, and Steven Jackson, his friend, defending him in both of their apologies. I don't have to delve too deeply into it. But what I will say is that this just shows that we need football back in a major way, as far as on the field. Obviously, what he said was very bad, and it's been analyzed back and forth and everywhere in between. But I think what his situation shows is that we need to get the games back as soon as possible. That's what we all want to see. But I think the responses are interesting. What you're seeing now also, and this ties into the Redskins as well, because we didn't talk about it on our last show. I meant to talk about it, but it slipped my mind. We're in a different age right now, a different era, and things are in a very sensitive way. The Washington Redskins deal, I'm saying Redskins in the context of this conversation or this show, I try to avoid saying it. It's a racial slur. I'm a New York Giants supporter or a fan when I was growing up, and Washington was in the same division. When I was a kid, I didn't think about it at all. I would say the name. I didn't think the look. I was not educated into it. But once I got into middle school and high school and started learning about civil rights, and learning about our Native American brethren and their realities of their time in this country pre-Christopher Columbus or pre-discovery, and I put discovery in quotes, and even now, and just the atrocities and the treatment of our Native American brethren. And so at the high school level, I really educated myself on that. Being a black man as well, you look at other civil issues, and as far as ethnicity and cultural. And from then on, I try to avoid using the name as much as I can. And since then I have not liked it. And I'm a man in my 30s now, and I'm older. I definitely don't like it. I think it's long overdue. I think it's something that it's not in the goodness of Daniel Snyder's heart, the owner of the team. A few years ago, he said the name would never change. And the only reason now you're starting to see them consider a name change is economics. the FedEx, the Federal Express, is the main sponsor of their stadium. They have condemned it and want to change. Nike, and why I always forget the third company that. So it's FedEx, Nike, and it's a third major company. First, pretty much the biggest sport entities or business entities in the world. And I'm really blanking on that. But the point is, though, it's the major issue as far as economics. And he wants a new stadium. And if he wants the new stadium and get public dollars or private dollars and get sponsorships, it's not going to happen. So my whole thing also with it, the name is bad, and I don't, and as I mentioned, I'm a black man and I have my opinions on it. I'm not speaking for all Native Americans, and I don't like the fact that I listen to a lot of talk shows and things of that regard. Non-Native Americans, and whether it's different ethnicities, black, white, others, are speaking for Native Americans, and they're saying that, oh, they don't mind the name. Don't ever do that. Don't ever speak for other people. And it goes, and it's similar to Desean Jackson. I've heard even people say what he said wasn't bad, or what he did as a non-Jewish person. I don't go there. I'm using the phrase. I have Jewish friends, but which you should not do that either. Do not speak for another ethnicity. If you're a man, and with women issues, it's hard to go there. Same deal with women talking about man issues or sexuality or things like that. If it's not your perspective, you can acknowledge other perspectives and try to understand them and say, I'm trying to see where you're coming from, and you can listen. But I found it very disappointing. I've heard people on the phone or talking on shows and even reading that Native Americans, they don't mind the use of names, and as far as but do you really? Where are you going for these sources? And not secondhand. Also, don't say, "Oh well, I heard from somebody that knows." No, don't do that. So that's a bad thing. So, but the name, as I said, it's Indians and warriors and braves and chiefs. Those are issues as well. And if you want to really break it down, you can go to the Fighting Illini or the Seminoles and things like that. We've had Iroquois names before. Those, I can really break those down as well, but it's not a slur as far as the actual visual or the physical aspect of a team. It's like calling someone the darkies or the whiteys or blackskins or things like that. That's not good at all. And then the logo as well. I'm rambling a little bit, but let's focus back on it. The logo of a Native American's head, in the garb, the stereotypical garb of a Native American, that's bad as well. I've always found that just as bad as the name itself. I've always thought if they wanted to be smart, and we saw the Cleveland Indians do it with a Chief Wahoo, the smiling Native American face. They've done away with it, or they're working their way away from it. They use the big C for Cleveland as their logo in a lot of things. And I still use Indians on the front of the jersey and things like that. But I always thought Washington would have been smarter over the years to maybe put like a big W or go Cleveland Browns route. Just don't have a logo on the jersey or on the helmet. I always thought that would be at least a step in the right direction. Will the name get changed by the time the season starts? It's a quick turnaround, and there's a lot of logistics that go with it. And I think Amazon, I know, also pulled the Washington like jerseys and pay the jerseys and hats and the memorabilia from their site. So I don't know if a name change is possible to come through this quickly, but and this we'll end on this, and then we'll move on to something else as far as the NFL goes. I've always thought also that it would have been a smart move, and now it's too late for this because Snyder has blown the PR opportunity. I've always thought if he did this a few years ago, and I mean, it's been written about, I've been reading about it since the 90s. So 20, 30 years about the name, and from national sources, from local sports media there, from Christine Brennan to Mike Wilbon to Mike Wise and Kornheiser, and all those guys have talked about the name and it needing to be changed and things like that. So it's not a new issue. But I thought if he was upfront with it, either one or two ways. If he was able, if he changed the name, and that would have, and you have the old fans that are going to be mad about it. And I've heard I've been a Redskins fan for 34 years, going back to Sonny Jurgensen and Bobby Mitchell and all that stuff, and Joe Theismann and the Hogs and all that stuff. I get all that. Respect to all that stuff. So those fans, they'll be mad, but they're not going to reject their team. They love the team. So if you call them the Washington Seahorses, they would support the team. They'd be initially mad, but they'll be back watching the squad and all of that stuff. So I always thought that either if you go with the name change and deal with the initial backlash, and you'll be all right. So I thought that would be one thing. And I also thought that also what you could do is partner up with, and now, as I said, once again, it's too late, but you could always partner up with Native American if you wanted to give your funds or give attention to Native Americans. That's what people saying, oh, it's a tribute to our Indians or our Native Americans using the Redskin name. It's not a tribute, but if you wanted that PR route, that could have been interesting the way, if you wanted to go that route a few years ago. Secondly, every time a team changes a color or a jersey or anything, you make more money, because those same fans and supporters that were with your squad, they want to get the new jersey. We've seen this with every team. We're dealing with the Falcons right now in Atlanta. It's not the same deal, but they're changing their uniform. So all the people that are, I know they're like Atlanta, they got to get the new jersey. They got to get the new hat, the new logo, and things like that. This could have been a very profitable endeavor for the Washington franchise if they did it earlier. And you keep the colors. The colors aren't bad. I actually like the red and gold, and that part's fine. But if you went with a different name, or if you kept the name, I don't recommend it. But if you eliminated the logo instead of the Native American head, and I said went with the block W or skins, well, if you changed it in a better way, you're going to make hundreds of millions of dollars just on resale. And if you want guys to turn in their original jerseys and things like that and flip it to the new jersey, that's fine too. So and Snyder, he knows about dollars. He's a Mr. Billionaire, and that's all these guys think about is the dollars and cents perspective. That could have been a very good way for him to make money, is to be ahead of the story in that regard. And I thought that 5-10 years ago. I was like, why don't they just change the name and go a different route, and they would make more money and get good PR on the side of as well. But as I said, that's completely done right now, and they're gonna have to figure it out. Another thing that came up in the NFL over the past few days are we're starting to see the coronavirus precautions that are starting to take place. And we're going to see a lot more when training camps open up. And I assume they're going to open up in early August. We've seen the elimination of the first 2 preseason games. So that means we're not going to see football action till mid to late August. But guys do stuff to be in camp and training and get prepared for the year. So we're going to see a lot more of the precautions as far as guys interacting and things that way. But the NFL did come out with the no jersey swapping policy. We've seen at the end of games over the past few years. Started off, I first saw it in professional soccer in Europe. But now we're starting to see it more in the United States. Guys after the game exchange jerseys on the field. The NFL is eliminating that, or that's what they're saying for now. So you have these guys literally sweating, bleeding, all over each other for an entire contest. Assuming that they've been tested and they can be on the field, and at the end of the game they can't exchange the same jerseys that they've been grinding on and beating up each other in throughout the contest. That makes no sense. And it's been roundly criticized by players and media and fans and things like that. I think, and we're going to delve into college athletics, and these teams and the leagues are trying to play. It's a tough game, literally and figuratively. You have athletics, and especially the contact sports. We've seen golf be able to do a decent job with it. We've seen boxing and MMA be able to do mixed martial arts, be able to be okay because it's very individualized. If a guy tests positive for his camp, you can cancel the fight or postpone it and go through those precautions. Even in soccer, if one person has it, you can kind of quarantine him and you can work it out. NFL and football in general, it's literally staff of hundreds. You have 80, 90 something players on the team as far as practicing. You have all the coaches, support staff, doctors, everything. You go down the line is so many people that they are doing it. And just the contact's unavoidable. Boxing and mixed martial arts is the ultimate hand-to-hand or body-to-body contact. But as I mentioned, they have individuals in it. Football, if you're just a lineman, you're blocking. If you're an offensive lineman, we'll just use that as an example. You're blocking a fellow defensive lineman. Linebackers, you're in a pile with your fellow offensive lineman. You're probably going to be near the quarterback blocking for him. You head to the sidelines. You have your entire team you're dealing with. The officials, they're in the middle of it all. Camera people, the stickmen, the guys who handle the yardsticks, the first down and all of that. All of them are on the field all together in a condensed area. In golf, you can kind of get away with distancing yourself and working around those lines. The ball itself, if you're a quarterback or you're a running back, if you're a quarterback, you take the snap and you hand it off to the running back, and he carries it a few yards, so he has contact with the ball. The person that tackled the running back is probably going to have contact with the ball. Then you give it back to the quarterback, and the official. So the point is there's so much bodily interaction with all of the players that saying that they can exchange jerseys at the end is silly. And we're starting to see now, because football is the biggest sport in the United States. It just is. Look, I love MLS, and I spent about 15 minutes talking about it, and we'll talk about baseball and basketball and NBA, and those sports are starting to work their way back. NHL. We love wrestling and martial arts, but NFL and in college football is second. Those are two biggest sports in our country. And they've been fortunate because no games have been played because they're in the off season. But moves are starting to be made, and this is transition us into the technical state of Georgia athletics because it does tie into what we have going on here. It's a major issue as far as if we're going to see fall sports. We'll start with the Ivy League that has suspended fall sports. That's football, cross country, volleyball, and soccer. Those are the main sports that go on. Now, I think they're going to try to have spring seasons or carry those over into the spring. Now, Ivy League, no disrespect to the Ivy League. Some of you probably either went. I think I know every Ivy League school. I think I've known someone that's attended there. I've had family go there too. I grew up in New York City, so it's the Northeast. I have Harvard, Yale people, Dartmouth, Brown, Columbia, Princeton, the whole deal. Who am I forgetting? Cornell. So I and Penn, I know the Ivy League very well. It's within the alumni, and it's a lot of smart people, and it's awesome in that regard. As far as the college sports landscape, they're kind of on an island of their own. They don't really, because it's just the way the Ivy League is set up. As far now, they compete for the conference championships in a major way, and that's why football, they can compete for the conference season only because they really don't play a big non-conference schedule that we're thinking of as compared to other Division I schools. Now, they do have a presence in a lot of the Olympic-style sports, like a volleyball and the cross-country and soccer, and then lacrosse. We see a lot of that presence in there as far as on a national scale. But as far as football goes, if they want to play just their football season in the spring and keep it in conference, that's fine. But what the Ivy League does have is a major presence on the college presidents. The ADs, they kind of, it's interesting because the athletic departments will look at the SEC and then certain programs in the Big 12 or the Pac-12 in Notre Dame. Those are the biggest ones. I went to Vanderbilt, so I saw both ends of it. Because Vanderbilt, because it's a very good school. I went there, I love it. But it is comparable to some Ivy League schools, and you could tell if Harvard was doing something, or Stanford's another program that's looked at academically and athletically by other ADs and presidents. If Brown or Dartmouth were kind of doing something, Vanderbilt would have as far as the academic side, you would see it. We would talk about it too, as far as, because I was an English major, with their departments, what they were doing, and fellowships and all that stuff. So the college presidents look at the Ivy League in that regard, and they also look at the athletics as well, because they try to balance of athletics and academics and things like that. Where the Vanderbilt side for me comes in on the athletics side is that the SEC is the Big 12 is close. I mean, the Big 10 is close as well. But as far as the prestige of the athletics and facilities and fan base, especially on the football side of things, the SEC is kind of the leader, or a lot of other conferences take their tones from what the SEC is doing. So we have an interesting dynamic of so if you're a president of a school, you look at the Ivy League and they're postponing their fall sports. That gets your attention because you're used to looking at those Ivy League schools because you're a college president in academia and all that stuff. So then you go down to the ADs or the athletic directors. If you're the president and you're asking your AD, look, the Ivy League is doing this, what's going on with our conference? That transitions to the Big 10, which is looked at in a very high regard. You have Michigan, Penn State, Ohio State. These are major players in college athletics in a lot of sports, but especially on the football side of things. They are only going to play conference games right now. They're staying in the fall, but they're only going to play conference games. So if you're an athletic director, and so you see the Ivy League and you see the Big 10, they make their announcements. What do you do? What is your next motion as far as where you're going to go? Football staying in the fall is very important for several reasons. One, let's look at it from the school side of things. You have a spring, and I've worked in college athletics for a few years. Fall is intentionally kind of left open. Volleyball goes on cross country, and those are great sports, great athletes, but they're not intensive as far as your resources go in comparison to football. I'll speak from a media relations side. All hands are on deck. All of your media relations people, marketing, compliance, because football is the largest roster on your campus, as far as academic advisors, all of them, development, raising money. Football games are a big money booster, a big money part of your athletic department. All of your resources are tied into football in the fall. That's why you dedicate all your resources to it. And volleyball gets a lot of attention too. Basketball doesn't really cross over into football as much as you think, because that's more of a spring thing. And really, December is when basketball starts, and most teams are done with their season for the most part. By December, you have your bowl games and all that. But for what we're talking about, you have all of your resources tied to the fall, because when the calendar year turns into January, you have basketball going on, and that takes you through March, and then you have the spring season. Spring is the worst. Well, not the worst. That's the wrong word. Spring is the busiest time of year because you have a lot of your Olympic sports: baseball, softball, tennis, lacrosse. All of those are going on. Track and field. All of those sports are happening in the spring. If you carry football over into that period, that's a rough go. You are bleeding out your resource, because football is still going to get the top attention, but as far as logistics, scheduling, it is a really, really bad deal if you are a college and trying to run your sports, that football going on at the same time as your spring sports. But the reality is, unlike the professional teams we've been talking about, everybody's calendar is different. You have USC, Southern California. They're only doing online courses for the fall as we're recording this show. We've said it before. We'll say it again. It's a very bad look if you're going to have your student athletes on campus for the fall. Your football players and your volleyball players and soccer players, they're on campus and no one else is. That's just a bad PR move. What do these other teams do? I think Harvard is doing online courses only for the fall. Yet you have teams because listen, like at Wisconsin or Notre Dame, they're going full on there. And I know in Georgia, and this transitions over to as the Georgia schools like Georgia Tech, Georgia State, Kennesaw State, Mercer, Georgia Southern, all those schools. They're going through with the school year of having people on campus as far as things go. So you have inconsistency because there's not one commissioner, there's not a players union, and that's where there's struggle as well, because what's the voice of the athletes? They're practicing, they're doing voluntary stuff, and I think Clemson shut down their voluntary practices, and several other schools have been doing it as well because of a lot of positive tests. There's no consistency as far as what the plan is for the fall. So that is a major, major issue that needs to be resolved. But as I said, the Ivy League and the Big Ten, they made their statement and their announcement, and that's going to carry a lot of weight in everything else that's going on. And then finally, miscellaneous department, as far as in / backdoor cut, talking about NBA, the players are starting to go to Orlando. We'll see what happens. I just don't, and I have no idea what to expect from this NBA season. NBA is a weird animal because the players are selfish is not the right word. All athletes are selfish. You have to be. Focus on yourself, get your body right, get your mind right, compete at such a high level. But NBA is so specialized, and these guys are used to a certain lifestyle. WNBA as well, as far as what they're going through. So when you see the pictures of the quote-unquote bad meals and are ready to complaints of not being able to do certain things, not saying don't have sympathy for them, but you look at the real world, unemployment, people dying, all that other stuff, and guys complaining about getting a sandwich with the apple or a banana. These guys, it's just a different mindset. And does that translate into the play? I'm not going to say guys aren't going to jake it. They're not going to be late. Once they're on the court, they're going to want to play because they're competitive and they want to win. But I think for the teams that aren't in championship contention, their motivation may not be 100% there. And just seeing the initial returns or initial stock of guys going to Orlando, I would say be very careful if you're putting money on or making predictions on who's going to win, because I don't know, and I just don't see some of these guys being motivated and ready to play. So those are my thoughts on everything that's going on. As always, follow everything that we're doing on sportsinquirer.net. Follow our social media platforms. And until next time, good fight and good night. And be safe.